Hello everyone, my name is Dr Diana Tolmie from the Queensland Conservatorium, Griffith University. Welcome everyone to the Music Livelihoods Knowledge Series. This is a series of 6 sessions that invite people to either reaffirm their current knowledge of musicians and or gain a deeper understanding for either the benefit of themselves or others. This knowledge series is also tied to the International Music Livelihoods Symposium, which is held online every year. And so this session is about music's passion and calling. So why this topic? Well, musicians are well known for their passion for music, and most will admit they are called to the vocation despite their experienced professional roadblocks. What makes them so resilient and determined to persevere? Is it as something simple as the dopamine release when passionately engaging with music, or do the endorphins just naturally kick in when rationalising the lows of the profession? This session will take a deep dive into the passion and calling of musicians, their professional and personal identity, drawing on the research of Vine and others who have recently explored these topics. It is anticipated by the end of the session, you will have some fundamental information to help you consider your own approach to navigate your musical journey. Passion. It's an interesting term, and in many ways it is quite powerful as it is often romantically attributed. Younger me struggled when using it in relation to my music vocation. I did have a revelation when a colleague said to me how much he admired my passion and how passionate I was about music. To which I replied, really? I don't consider myself passionate compared to the other musicians I work with. And what he then said stuck with me. You're passionate, they're dysfunctional. So that got me thinking, can your musical passion help or hinder? Is it measurable? How does it or does it change over time? What external factors affect your music passion? What actually is passion? So we need to consider what are some synonyms for the word passion. When you check out the synonyms in a Word document, it will provide you with desire, hunger, thirst, appetite, craving, lust, urge, ache, rage, and fury. And at the very least, these are what we call active words, as they have an energy about them and suggest there is an investment of self in the activity somehow, be it physically or mentally or emotionally. So musical passion researchers Bonneville, Rusi and Valorant in 2020 had a good look at the passion-related research and came to the definition that passion is the extent to which the activity is loved, valued, is a passion, as well as the time spent in the activity and integration of passion into the identity. What I like about this definition is that it offers some parameters that makes the younger me feel a little bit better about attributing the word passion to my relationship with music. I love music, but there are some days that I don't love music. It could be because I'm doing too much of it and it's affecting other areas of my life, or conversely, I'm not able to spend as much time with it, and as a result, like a long-distance relationship, the love fades until I am reunited. In that sense, passion is not a fixed construct, and it is evident that an ongoing commitment to the craft fuels the passion. Common sense, but good to rationalize if we are feeling guilty about not feeling guilty about practicing. Some days I would say my relationship with music fits more into the camp of like, but I still value it. I value what it contributes to my life and the life of others, what it does for social good and contributes to a national cultural identity. But it doesn't mean I love every single aspect about the process or that I love it every single minute of every single day. Also, even though the younger me could not adopt the passion word, it was evident that something of a passion was occurring owing to the sheer amount of time I was engaging with music. And not just physically, but also mentally. And to that end, if people ask me, what do you do? I would say I was a clarinetist, even though at the time I was also a music educator and a raft of other related types of employment. So whether I liked it or not, my passion was my identity. So these and other researchers conducted multiple studies and consistently found that 99% of expert musicians are passionate. And to give you an Australian perspective, 95% of my own 2017 doctoral study of 254 Australian musicians also suggested they were passionate about music. More on that soon. So they concluded that a dualistic model of passion existed. That is, there are two types of passion, harmonious and obsessive. As I describe the two terms, what they are and how they affect the musician, I would like you to reflect on your own relationship with music and consider how it affects or relates to your own psychological and physical well-being. So Bonneville and Russi and Valerin suggested that harmonious passion, and I quote, prompts a musician to freely choose to engage in music for the pleasure derived from it without external or internal pressure. In addition, it is characterized by a flexible persistence in the activity, leaving space for other important life domains such as family, physical activity, and hobbies, because this type of experience is more adaptable. People experience mostly positive consequences such as positive emotions, reduced stress, and an enhanced psychological well-being. These researchers also suggested that in music, it has been associated with future music-related intentions and persistence in a music program for music students. And for our older musicians, think back to your relationship with your music during high school and the many other commitments you engaged with. And for expert musicians, higher levels of musical performance and life satisfaction, experience of flow, reduced negative emotions, and increased concentration during a task. So in contrast, we have obsessive passion, and with that, they suggest musicians feel controlled by external or internal pressures that drive their involvement in music. For example, external pressures from auditions or internal pressures to excel at all costs. This results in an unmanageable urge to engage in the musical activity that they love. The passionate activity comes to control the person's life and can create conflicts with other life domains. Thus, the importance of the activity may become disproportionate, and the time invested in the passionate activity often occurs to the detriment of other important activities, such as family events or even health. This leads to rigid persistence as well as negative emotions, anxiety, and lower levels of well-being. Obsessively passionate musicians may continue taking part in the activity regardless of the psychological and physical consequences associated with it. They are more likely to experience negative emotions, anxiety, defensiveness, and threat susceptibility. So let's test this knowledge. I'll offer a description of a type of a musician, and let's see if we can categorize them as having harmonious passion or obsessive passion. So here we have Jane has a strong ambition to become a well-respected jazz and rock pop drummer. Her practice sessions are very structured and deliberate with a goal to master new techniques and maintain her current skill set. She enhances her practice sessions through subscribing to YouTube channels of famous pedagogues and tries out new techniques. She describes how the time just flies when she practices. She loves the fact that her music takes her to new places and meets new people, and is described by all she tours and gigs with as possessing a consistent and easygoing personality. She had a hand injury recently and had to stop playing for a month, but her recognition of the need for her body to rest meant the weeks passed quickly and she was able to ease back into playing. She used the time productively to listen to music, attend live gigs, and catch up with friends. She also produces prize-winning orchids. So, harmonious or obsessive passion. So have a think about what elements of this example were intrinsically or externally driven. And perhaps what are some potential risks for Jane? So here we have in bold elements of Jane's intrinsic and extrinsic influences. So she has strong ambition to become well-respected, okay, jazz and rock drummer. So that's some external. Her practice sessions are very structured and deliberate with a goal to master new techniques and maintain her current skill set. So this is very much intrinsically driven. She seeks her input from a diverse array of people, doesn't focus on one person, and she experiences flow. She also likes the broader experiences that music can offer her, and that having a consistent and easygoing personality is clearly someone who has harmonious passion. We do question as to how she got that hand injury, but the fact that she was able to be patient and think about the long-term perspective and not play through pain is admirable. She uses her time productively, but she also attends other areas, live gigs, and catches up with friends as well. So has a pretty overall good approach to her livelihood, and also has a side hobby. Here we have John. So John is a classical violinist who is currently freelancing as a session musician for orchestras and is a member of a high-level string quartet that performs recitals and tours. He teaches privately and is continually preparing for orchestra auditions and gaining lessons from high-profile visiting artists. He's very mindful of the term, "You are only as good as your last gig," and of the slippery slope that is the casual lists of the orchestras that he works for. He strives for perfection within all of his preparation, often missing meals or sacrificing birthday and social events in lieu of practice. This becomes more pronounced when the auditions are looming. He is constantly seeing a physio for his tendinitis and opts to play through pain, then say no to work, as declaring an injury could show him as possessing inferior technique or let people know he is permanently unemployable. Friends and colleagues really like him, but do describe him as intense and single-minded. He doesn't have anything much else to talk about except music. When you ask John if he's happy, he takes his time to respond. So again, harmonious or obsessive passion. And here we have a lot of elements that are driving him towards being obsessively passionate about his music. So again, have a think about what elements of these examples were intrinsically or externally driven, and perhaps think about what could John do differently. So another question to think about is the dual model of passion a binary or continuum construct? So in order to discuss this, think about your answer to the question, what do you love about music? Does it indicate an obsessive or harmonious passion? I only ask this because the answers can be really revealing. So some might say it's how it makes you feel. Others might say how you can communicate with music and share your passion with others. Some will actually say it's my escape, it's my therapy, it's my home. Some will say, I like how you feel when you have accomplished something. Some people will say, it's who I am. And others will actually suggest, it's like being part of something that is bigger than yourself. So something that I've noticed is that there are those that love the perfection of music or its capacity for perfection. And commonly, these are orchestral musicians and concert pianists who have experienced a very rigid, controlling pedagogy and likewise repertoire that perceivably requires such an approach. Subsequently, many will admit to experiencing burnout and a recognized need to reframe their approach to their passion. Conversely, I've witnessed those who answer the limitless possibilities of music, and they tend to either feel very optimistic about their future with music, or for some, try to attain it all at once, which can likewise lead to a form of burnout if not made aware and monitored. So in summary, harmonious passion. Musicians control their passion towards music, and arguably this means sustainable, while with obsessive passion, musicians are controlled by the music, which is potentially non-sustainable or at very least fraught with future challenges. This begins to explain why there is a substantial variance in the psychological well-being of musicians, and to that end, the cause of performance anxiety in musicians, which short-term solutions, such as controlling your breathing, cannot, in the end, solve. So, what can we do? We need more promotion of healthy passion, where there are music educators fostering autonomy within their teaching practice and work environments that allow for flexibility and healthy processes. The alternative, controlling, rigid education, and work environments will continue to attract and cultivate obsessive passion in musicians, and that is not sustainable. This is a conundrum for some places of the music industry, for example, those that have large budget organisations possessing high quality accountability, where reform would be slow, if at all. The editing processes of recording likewise do not help our situation. Even if the public cannot recognise the areas in the live versus the recorded performance, the musicians can, which places more internally driven pressure. However, there is a potential silver lining. Long term, this may not be a problem. As we enter into a period of AI-guided and created music, errors in performance may be relished as more authentic and more human. So, onto some statistics. Now, what you are seeing here are some numbers to give you a bit more relevancy to the diversity of age group that might be listening to this lecture. So every year I ask the first year Queensland Conservatorium Griffith University Bachelor of Music students to provide some descriptors about how they rate certain musical traits and experiences. I ask them to respond to the question, in general, I am passionate about music, rating 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. I also noted whether they were professionally active, and it was largely in teaching, performance, composition, and production, usually in either or paid capacities, and they were developing their portfolio of work. And what we see here is the weighted average out of 5 and the percentage of the cohort that responded positively. So my question to you is, what do you notice? And the passion was at its highest in 2020. So while the sheer statistics don't capture whether the passion is obsessive or harmonious, another study myself and some other colleagues conducted looked into the educational practices of students in lockdown and online learning. And what we found was that the performance students were forced to be autonomous, multiple deadlines were taken away, and given the changing nature of assessment, there was a greater focus on excellence versus perfection. So it was more so about investing in one's own passion for the sake of it, thus a more intrinsically driven motivation. So on to the concept of calling. I want to propose a passion calling model of mine to you that I'll unpack. I hope it will give you food for thought. So here we have the model is that we start with engagement with music. So it's that time investment, the effort, the discipline, what we love about it, our values, and therefore how it develops our music identity. And this develops over time and hits critical mass and becomes a passion, which could be harmonious, it could be obsessive, but this leads to more engagement with music, whatever that may be for you. It could be actually in multiple areas, which basically increases greater confidence in what we do, career decision-making and planning occurs, and that creates positive perceptions of career success. And that invested effort continues, which further fuels a calling, which leads to more engagement, which leads to more passion, and the cycle begins. Now, at the core of this are the concepts of motivation and identity, and to help explain, I'll refer to the work of Maslow. So here we have a visual of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which in a nutshell is a psychological theory of motivation that states the categories of needs that drive human behaviour, usually presented in a pyramid of levels, but it must be acknowledged that multiple levels can be active at one time. Here we have them categorised as growth versus deficient needs, and it's generally understood that one cannot ascend into the growth needs unless the deficiency needs are met first. So, for example, if we apply this theory to education, a child that is not fed, feeling safe, loved, will struggle more to develop enough confidence or capability to learn effectively. So what you will notice is an added transcendence on top of self-actualization, which is fulfilling personal potential. It is my observation and research into musicians' lives that their calling and identity development means they start at least from self-actualization and navigate the deficient needs more strongly as their career progresses and other pragmatic life priorities are added, such as starting a family, buying a house. So in short, the standard growth needs are their deficient needs. They do not view their music making as simply a job that is a means to an end, rather a passion, and subsequently for many, a calling. So in other words, the triangle is flipped. So what is calling, and do you think you have one, and is it as strong as one's passion? So researchers will agree that passion and calling are very intimately related, but the jury is out as to which came first. It also may be that you have a calling, but you don't yet realize it. Thompson and Bunderson's review of calling research identified two main types of calling. So the first is neoclassical, or otherwise known as traditional calling, draws from origins in religion, best described for those experiencing what we call societal obligations or external summons, aligning with Maslow's term, what we call outer requiredness or a sense of obligation. They labelled the second type of calling as modern, which engages one's internal preferences or passions, described as meaningful when and if it is significant to the individual and not necessarily because it benefits society, and further recognise the relationship with Maslow's inner required list founded in what we call self-indulgence rather than duty. Rather than consider these as a continuum or a binary construct, these researchers asserted that a conviction that one's work is more than just a job or career may result from a compelling personal narrative that sensibly marries the two, and thus concluded a third type of calling, when both inner and outer requiredness were high, titled transcendent calling. And this is a conviction often felt as a sense of destiny or fit, that a particular domain of work leverages one's particular gifts and consuming passions in services of a cause or purpose beyond self-interest. So our musicians fit quite well in the latter, with many in my doctoral study and a current research that I'm going through commenting a lack of ego resulted in their service of something bigger than themselves, with one musician stating that for him, music and performing music was like touching God. So the table that you're seeing here is a comparison of 5 years of first-year Bachelor of Music students to the musicians of 2017, rating the question, I believe music is my calling. So once again, what do you notice about this data? And the answer is that the musician's calling ranks much lower than the student musicians. And this is where we start to talk about the alignment of your values and our actions, or what we are employed in. So once again, have a think about your personal answer to the question, what do you love about music? Your answer represents your values and effectively the threads that you will find throughout your career. Mine was the fact that music can tell a story, and it's no surprise that I work a lot in music theatre, as well as in multiple areas of the music industry where storytelling is a big part of what I engage in, be it investigating musicians' lives, helping students navigate their story, or writing the story of others. So what we're possibly seeing here is that the difference between the musicians and the con students' results represent the difference between perceiving or having and living a calling. So Duffy and researchers promote the worker's calling theory, stating that if someone perceives a calling but is unable to live it out, it may lead to regret and resentment, ultimately decreasing satisfaction in one's current job and life overall. Naturally, the inverse is applicable. So what my data is saying is that musicians have passion, potentially have or are living a calling, and some actually possess conflicting realities. So comparing studies of my musicians with others, the researchers acknowledge clearly being a musician usually comes with a level of passion that is not widespread in the overall population. Indeed, some other researchers, DiRenzo and colleagues, observed in the calling literature a hierarchy in descending order: musicians, artists, military officers, managers, and business students. All right. So in summary, what's the difference between passion and calling? So passion relates to the energy and devotion and emotion towards an activity. Calling is a stronger urge towards a particular way of life and is founded in the concept of vocation. For some, there's an element of a driving force external to oneself, and you can have a calling or be living one. So another bunch of researchers, Dobro and friends' review of the last 20 years of research into calling came to the conclusion that callings are even more positive than expected, but primarily for people fortunate enough to be experiencing them. And they found 5 key aspects to calling. There was the bright side, where calling is more relevant to deeper growth-oriented rather than more fleeting, pleasurable types of happiness. And having and living a calling is related to lower work-family conflict, or what we term a healthy work-life balance. There is the dark side. The workers' calling theory suggests a lived-out calling could be potentially harmful if individuals work in exploitative environments or are workaholics. Therefore, these challenges and stresses can lead to burnout and exhaustion, but stronger callings and associated passion tend to act as a buffer and immunize people against such negativity. Also, a challenging profession can lead people to rationalize that their work is a calling. In this case, they have high value for their role and its contribution, and likewise, their positivity increases resilience. You see this a lot in the medical profession. The third one is what we call self versus others, that there's those with a calling are both more intrinsically and extrinsically motivated, not either or, but more intrinsic than extrinsic. Those searching for a calling while finding it stressful still found meaning and were as intrinsically motivated as those who were living their calling. We find this a lot in higher music education. And so for number 4, calling is a different concept to the terms job satisfaction, work engagement, and career commitment. You can have those things while not being called to the profession. And number 5, calling affects everything, work, life, be it positively or negatively. So there's 2 more concepts of calling I would like to briefly discuss. Again, researchers Dorenzo and co. identified calling and passion as a contagion. So think back to your time in school learning music and hanging out with your music friends, and likewise with your colleagues as an undergraduate, and once again with your musician friends. Musicians speak our own music language. We exude an infectious passion, and it's hard not to adopt others' aspirations or those of our mentors or heroes. And to that end, Praxova and co, so these were other researchers, study of an Australian university undergraduate students, also recognised a tunnel career vision might be linked to highly competitive fields in which career paths and resulting successes are defined narrowly. So in other words, when we are younger, we are susceptible to the calling contagion, and depending on the pedagogy of our music training, likewise susceptible to a rigid perception of career, if not introduced to a broad array of possibilities. So what? Well, what we can conclude is that some musicians may be experiencing a calling and not realize it, that combined with passion means they have a strong immunity to the challenges and negative experiences that can naturally occur with the music profession. This is called identity resilience, and likewise our passion and calling feeds it. Our engagement with music is cyclical, but it requires constant tending. It does not simply exist as an inherited gene. As one musician recently stated in one of my research studies, music gives more energy, but it takes more energy. What's really interesting is that 5% of my doctoral study musicians said they were unsure whether they were passionate about music, and these were people that either expressed deep dissatisfaction with the people they were working with, or working in non-music employment and their music performance work was declining or very nominal, and they were not enacting their own music projects. Or they were in performance employment where there was limited autonomy, for example, full-time orchestral work. Likewise, most of these people were unsure or disagreed as to whether they were called to music. So the reverse or unwinding of the model can happen. which leads to literally falling out of love with music and therefore a decline in calling as other competing activities and a hierarchy of needs come to the fore or are prioritised. There has been criticism of music teaching as a fallback career. Basically, people say don't do it unless you really want to be a teacher. However, what music teaching does do that some other occupations do not is ensure the musician remains engaged with music and is one method of fueling the fire. Conversely, my recent study on those working in dual careers, not music teaching, revealed that participants had very high passion and calling for music, were incredibly autonomous, and for the most part represented harmonious, not obsessive passion. In the end, it's for you to decide, but ask yourself how any of your choices align with your values. So, what do we do with this information? Well, first things first, be aware of the contagion, be it passion or calling. Your story is your story, and you are writing it. March to the beat of your own drum and not others. Awareness is also a start. Ask yourself the tough questions. What do you love about music? And from the answer, identify your values. With respect to your relationship with music, consider what type of music training have you experienced? Is it controlling, autonomous, informal? Is this still impacting your approach to your music profession? Reflect on your approach to the excellence versus perfectionism. What is your music employment workplace like? Is it inflexible? Is it flexible? What type of other musicians work with you? What type of music are you engaging with? What are the employment conditions? Is there scope for change for the better? What are the pros and cons? And there is a saying that when accepting work, to consider the criteria: good people, good music, good money, and 2 out of the 3 will ensure a fit with your values. Other questions to ask: are you looking after yourself mentally and physically? Does your passion calling positively or negatively affect yourself and those around you? And lastly, research your future and the many options to you. Vocational clarity alleviates any sense of dissatisfaction and replaces it with optimism. Talk to people, hear their story, but create your own. I hope this session has offered some fuel for thought and afforded some clarity with either your relationship with music or your observations of other musicians. The next topic in this series is musicians' career journeys. Is it luck or overnight success? Meeting that one famous person that opens all the doors, or the slow grind of hard work that finally pays off? This session reveals there is actually a science and method to the madness and gives sound examples to many career theories that apply to the diversity of musicians' lives and ways of being. This is also a great session for those who would like to understand further how to plan for the unexpected and be armed with knowledge to help navigate the realities of a music career.